Opportunist thieves will often take a moment to seize our property, hoping to make a few pounds from a quick sale. But organised crime gangs look for higher rewards. Their typical targets include building sites. In the construction industry, around £70 million worth of heavy plant machinery is stolen each year. Vehicles like this telescopic handler cost between £10,000 and more than £100,000 apiece. Often left on site and unattended, they are frequently targeted. Tracking companies are doing their utmost to combat this kind of heavy-duty hijacking.
Specifically for a telehandler, these are really quite high-value machines and they tend to be stolen by serious organised criminal gangs. And those kind of people will steal them literally to transport and to sell. If you wanted to take £100,000 in cash or drugs across borders and into another country, you've got a serious challenge on your hands and the penalties for doing so would be huge. If, however, you want to do that and you steal the machine locally, you're effectively taking £100,000 over to the end destination where you will readily be able to turn it back into cash.
A brazen example of this occurred in the West Yorkshire town of Castleford in 2011. Peter's tracking company swung into action following a phone call from one of his clients.
He rang us up and was actually just asking about some of the units on his tracking software. He incidentally mentioned to me that he'd had a theft that day. Obviously, we were hoping it had a tracking system on there. He said it didn't. While we were checking the locations of machines on his list and getting live locations, he said, "Oh, that's weird. I mean, that's not meant to be in that location. What can that be?" And he sort of hung up the phone very promptly and rang us back 5 minutes later and went, "It's got a tracking system on it." It's from a job that we had previously. We didn't take the tracking system off. We immediately called the head of our investigations team, a chap called John Mussett. I just called him up and said, "Get in the car now. We'll give you more details en route."
That's right. There's been a scary 10-ton machine on the loose in West Yorkshire for nearly 3 days, and the owners have only just noticed. Peter's colleague John quickly set off in pursuit. The telehandler was somewhere near Castleford, and John had to get there fast to pinpoint the signal and location.
So we're on our way up to Castleford, travelling up the A1. The tracking circle was showing up near to a place called Fairburn Ings, which is a nature reserve, but also covering part of Castleford town centre. I found it using the rangefinder, which is a directional signal that the unit gives out. So basically follow the loudest noise and eventually it will take you to the machine. So on this occasion it took us to a triangular piece of wasteland at the side of the railway line where I could see the roof of the telehandler hidden amongst the trees.
The vehicle had been hidden from view, a standard tactic used by organised criminals.
Because the machine had been missing for several days at this point, it had obviously been left there to cool off. Thieves would leave a machine to cool off because they know that a lot of these high-value assets do have trackers and they don't want to be caught red-handed with them, so they will leave them somewhere out of the way, probably where the public don't have an easy view of the machine, just to cool off, and they'll go back a couple of days later. If the machine is still there, they will assume there is no tracker fitted and move it.
Tracking the machine was relatively easy. However, retrieving the telehandler turned out to be anything but.
At the point that I'd arrived and found the machine, unbeknownst to me initially, one of the thieves was in there about to move it. So when I looked again into the scrubland, the machine was actually moving in amongst the trees.
John dialed 999 and alerted the police.
I was really pumped up at that point because I knew that we were going to end up with some kind of a pursuit.
We've had a few pursuits over the time. Whenever that happens, two things cross through our mind. A, it's an unusual situation and it's I'll be honest, it's a bit exciting when these things happen, but also with a responsibility for our investigators on the ground, we're obviously a little bit concerned.
So, there's a telehandler chugging along at 15 miles per hour through the streets of Castleford. John kept the police updated throughout his frustrating journey.
He wasn't aware I was following him at that point. I was several vehicles back. It was awkward because he was going so slowly and there was a lot of traffic. So I had to keep turning into side roads to avoid getting too close behind him. But eventually, after probably 5 minutes or so, we'd ended up with 2 Panda cars behind me and then a couple of other marked vehicles, Panda cars, coming in the opposite direction. At this point, he became aware that something was amiss, I believe, and that the police were actually onto him.
The chase had been on for several miles now and had reached Sheep Walk Lane, where the thief tried a manoeuvre to lose the police.
He came to a road junction, he turned left and then did another left turn into what transpired was a cul-de-sac. Ah, yes, I remember it well.
But the crook's error almost had disastrous consequences for John.
This is the cul-de-sac that the telehandler turned down. I think probably the thief didn't realise it was a cul-de-sac when he turned into it. I got halfway down and realised that it was a cul-de-sac myself. So I pulled over onto the left-hand side onto the footpath to keep out of the way. The two Panda cars went past me towards the telehandler, but when he got to the top of the cul-de-sac, he decided he wasn't stopping. So he did a three-point turn with the machine and came back towards us.
The thief wasn't going to give up easily. He knew this machine could do a lot of damage.
This guy was basically trapped into a corner and was fighting his way out. And he had something much more powerful than anyone else involved in that, whether it's police cars or my cars. If they want to, they'll just go straight through the police cars if they weren't there.
So the two Panda cars reversed past me at speed, and then I had to reverse, and luckily one of the other patrol cars that was on the main road behind us had stopped all the traffic so we could get out of the way to let the telehandler get out the cul-de-sac. It was very unnerving, yeah. You get a 10-ton machine kind of coming towards you and you're stuck with your reverse gear, hoping that the two patrol cars that were behind me were going to keep moving.
At the wheel of a slow, heavy-duty loader, there was no way the crook could outrun the police. But they had no idea the lengths this thief would go to in order to evade capture.
Yeah, he travelled a few hundred yards out of the houses and then did a right turn and crashed straight through this hawthorn hedge. To watch that, it was impressive. He didn't slow down at all, and obviously the weight of that machine, about 10 tonnes, just took him straight through the hedge, and off he went straight through the crop. He was pretty intent on not stopping and surrendering to the police, even though there were by that time at least 6 marked police vehicles near to him.
The telehandler thief clearly worked on the principle that it was his way or the highway. But an imminent collision with the M62 motorway brought his dreams of a smart getaway to a standstill.
The officers came into the field. At this point, the thief had stopped in the middle of the field but wouldn't get out of the telehandler, so they ended up tasering him in the cab. He fell out of the cab. He got up, ran at the police officers, so they had to taser him a second time, and that subdued him and he was handcuffed and arrested.
Without the tracking system, we would never have seen this again unless it was a pure coincidental find. We just wouldn't even know where to look.
It was a cracking result. It was a good track. It was an interesting pursuit with the police, and it was a good result at the end. Customer got his machine back with minimal damage, and also we got the offender arrested.
No doubt the residents of Castleford were extremely relieved to have this fearsome 10-ton vehicle off their streets.